All right, it's Friday, December 22nd. This is an end of the day and end of the week SPY recap. And today on the daily chart, we end up with kind of a two up, little red bar here. It's almost a neutral bar. It's not necessarily a failure, but it certainly didn't reach its target either. So after this inside day yesterday, we move up at the open, but we don't, first of all, I'll show you in a minute, we didn't really follow through much after the opening price, and we certainly didn't reach our target up here, and yet we didn't come down through the midway point of that bar to fail and get another, movement to the downside. So we kind of just stayed neutral, and that, again, it's just not surprising after Wednesday, which I'll get into in a second, that we had that big, three bar to the downside. At that point, you were expecting at least a test lower and to see what happens. There's no actionable signal the next day on these three bars, but you expect a test lower, and instead price gapped up the next day. So we're right in the middle of this trading range, and that's kind of the theme now. As we go forward, we have this trading, spreading out the 15-minute chart. We have the highs up here, lows down here. This is a big trading range we're in. That's why these daily, movements are tricky at the moment, and especially after this big day down here on Wednesday that then gapped up right to the middle of the range, because you want to get immediate follow through. And, as it turned out, we stayed just inside. And that's why today, when you have an inside bar, I'm always ready for a potential failure, which means you take out a high or low of the range and then come back through the range. We gapped up a little bit. So we really, even though we didn't start up, which I'll show you in a minute, we certainly didn't fail to the downside either. So, the trend is still up, but we have a big trading range. So now some of the best trades I think are going to be if they develop at the bottom of this range, either, price coming down there and starting back up, or maybe failing to break out. And if we start higher, just beware, you got to be breaking out of that. If it's just not going to do it like today, then be very careful, with trades at the top of a range. And we'll see where we go on the weekly chart. We end up with 8 weeks in a row up. So at any moment, I still think we can get a 2-down week. There's a gap to fill in here, but price action is going to have to lead the way. Like this week, we stayed above the midpoint of the prior week. We tested the high of that green bar, and it was actually pretty easy trading for these 2 days and even this third day. And then these last 2 days were the tough ones. If we go back and just review the week real quickly, it's really pretty easy. On Monday, we had push up right out of the gates, buy, 1 push up, 2 pushes up. Same thing on Tuesday, 1 push up, kind of 2 pushes up. We even had that on Wednesday, 1 push up, 2 pushes up. And after doing that 3 days in a row, I shot a video how I bought some puts here, just anticipating a little pullback. As it turned out, it became a really nice trade. But once I saw the big red bar close down here, and then it gap up the next day, that's where it became tricky to know what's really developing. We're just in the middle of a big range here, and that's why some of the trades the last couple of days have been tough to figure out in terms of what to do, and you don't want to be too aggressive here on Thursday and Friday. Yesterday, price opened up a little bit, didn't really go anywhere. It consolidated inside that first bar for a long time, eventually broke lower, but didn't follow through and then came back up. So there's tricky trading, even though for a moment the break was to the downside and you had an hour and a half or so to at least, monitor the trade and not do worse than break even. Today, if you wanted to, we were gapping up. Here's the pre-market range between the blue lines. Second bar did follow through to the upside. If you bought that and you had to wait about an hour, once it broke down to the halfway point of that bar, that's a small loss here. This thing could have really dropped, a lot more than it did right at, after that failure. It didn't do that. It kind of, once it took out the midpoint of this bar, you expected the low, intraday low to be tested. You could see it did that. Then it decided to pop up again, but we never really tested the highs again for a confirmation to the upside. So again, I'm not surprised that after all this action, we then rolled over here and came down and took out the pre-market lows, which was once you saw the big move, heading down on this little, this is like a orderly pullback. Then the red bar here, you kind of, at this point, could have expected these lows to be tested again. And then once it took it out, it went right to that target, took the liquidity out, and then popped right back up. So we end up with this kind of neutral looking day. So anyway, theme going forward here is big trading range. Spread it out again. Be careful trading in here. Any trades we take, inside of this range, we're just kind of judging the opening price action in the first bar and seeing if we get to the top or bottom of the range, and we know that it might be choppy in here, so you got to be careful about that until we get some really clear signals developing. I would say on Monday there is a clear, downside signal here since we failed on the inside bar to reach our target. If we get a 2 down, I would play that, see how we work to the bottom of the range, see if any kind of move is strong enough to get a 2 down week going. On the upside, yeah, I mean, if you get something above the midpoint of today and breaking out, yeah, we're still, even though it's 8 weeks in a row up, we can still be breaking higher because we have the monthly targets that are higher. Again, on the monthly chart, we're going to close the month here green, it looks like. And the year is going to close green. So we should follow through higher towards these targets into either at the end of this year or into 2024. So the buys are still upside. I'd play that if it unfolds, but I also know that we're in the top of a range. So if it doesn't immediately go, you have to get right out. And that might be the start of a move to the bottom of the range again. So that's the type of stuff you're dealing with right now on the daily chart. And again, first 3 days here were good trading days. Last 2, not so much. And we will kind of see what unfolds to start the week next week.